The sun rises over Palawan like a burning coin, sliding above the jungle hills and spilling light across the bay. It's December 1944. The war in the Pacific is moving fast, and the island feels like a forgotten corner of it, quiet but tense, like the pause before a storm. Beyond the palm trees, behind barbed wire, stands the prison camp at Puerto Princesa. The men inside are thin, tanned to leather, their uniforms reduced to rags. Most came from Bataan and Corregidor, soldiers who once fought until the ammunition ran dry. Now they carry shovels instead of rifles. You can hear the scrape of metal on coral, the rhythm of forced labor. They are building an airstrip for the enemy. Every day the guards bark orders, the prisoners dig, and the smell of fuel drifts through the heat. To the locals, these men are ghosts in slow motion. Private Glenn McDole, 20 years old, moves in the middle of the line. He keeps his eyes low, counting each shovelful as if it might end the day faster. He doesn't speak much. There's nothing left to say that hasn't been said before, about home, about food, about freedom. When the guard looks away, he glances at the bay. The water glitters a few hundred yards beyond the wire, blue and endless. It feels close enough to touch, but it might as well be another world. The camp itself is a patchwork of bamboo huts, tin sheets, and open latrines. There are trenches everywhere, air raid shelters, the Japanese call them. Long, narrow holes lined with logs. The prisoners dug them months ago, each one deep enough to hide a dozen men. Some whisper that they're too deep, too tight, that maybe they weren't meant for protection at all. Still, life goes on in small, stubborn ways. A scrap of tin becomes a cup, a piece of string, a fishing line. At night, the men hum old songs under their breath. They talk about home in the past tense, when I was there, not when I go back. The guards are quieter these days. Radios play faintly in their barracks, voices from Manila, sometimes Tokyo. The prisoners catch fragments: defeat, invasion, Americans advancing. The words mean hope, but also danger. They've heard the stories, other camps, other prisoners who vanished when Allied troops drew near. One evening, McDole and a few men linger near a trench, staring into its darkness. Someone says softly, "If they ever come for us, this is where we'll be." Another answers, "Maybe we'll dig our way out." No one laughs. The air smells of rain and smoke. Somewhere beyond the fence, the jungle hums with crickets and nightbirds. Inside the wire, 100 men try to sleep, unaware that the next sunrise will bring the moment every rumor has been pointing toward. If you were standing there, you might think the camp looks calm. You might believe the worst is already over. But inside those narrow trenches, under that quiet sky, the ground itself is waiting to reveal its secret. The story is about to begin. Morning comes bright and still. The sea is calm, the air thick and heavy. Prisoners line up for roll call, their shovels ready, their stomachs empty. The guards pace the rows with rifles slung low, faces unreadable. Then the siren starts. A sharp, metallic scream tears across the camp. "Air raid! American planes!" someone shouts in Japanese. The guards wave their arms, barking orders. "Get down! Into the trenches!" The men move fast, half running, half stumbling toward the narrow shelters they dug themselves. McDole follows the others into Trench C. The tunnel is dark and damp, smelling of earth and sweat. Bodies press close. Someone jokes weakly, "Guess we'll mess lunch again." No one answers. Above them, the sound of boots. The trap door slams shut, the light disappears. A moment of silence follows, too long, too still. Then a new sound, splashing liquid. The odor hits first, gasoline. Someone whispers, "They're pouring it." Another man, hoarse with disbelief, mutters, "No, they wouldn't." The first flames crackle, smoke curls into the tunnel. Men cough, press cloth to their faces. Someone claws at the dirt wall. Panic spreads like the fire itself. McDole feels the air thinning. The smoke is hot, thick, alive. He can't see, can barely breathe. A hand grabs his arm. "The small tunnel, remember? The one toward the cliff." It's a voice he knows. Maybe Nielsen's, maybe someone else's. In the dark, names don't matter anymore. He crawls toward the corner where they had once started digging a drain tunnel, a forgotten project. He runs his fingers along the packed earth. The wall feels soft, loose. A spark of instinct lights inside him. Behind him, voices plead, choke, fade. Ahead, somewhere, there's a trace of air, cool, faint, different. McDole starts to dig. The soil breaks apart in his hands. Every inch forward feels stolen. The tunnel is barely wide enough for one man, and the smoke keeps pushing in. His fingers bleed. Someone beside him gasps, "Keep digging! There's light!" He can hear the guards shouting above, muffled by fire and dirt. A bullet cracks through the air somewhere outside. The heat builds, the roar grows louder. Then, finally, the wall gives way. A sliver of daylight spills through, a thin, wavering blue glow. The smell of salt water drifts in. He pushes harder, widening the hole. Cold air rushes against his face. For a second, he almost cries. Then he turns back. "This way," he shouts, though his voice is barely a whisper. They crawl, one behind another, out of the smoke, out of the grave they dug with their own hands. The light grows stronger. The tunnel opens into a narrow gap between rocks. Beyond it lies the edge of the world, a steep cliff and the sea far below. The air outside feels strange, clean, unreal. Behind them, the camp burns. Ahead, waves crash against the shore, waiting. McDole looks back once, then forward again. The choice is clear now. The moment has come when a man either stays or jumps. The opening in the cliff is small, just wide enough for a man to squeeze through. Wind rushes in, carrying the smell of salt and fire. The bay below shimmers in the sunlight, calm and merciless at the same time. McDole presses his back to the rock and looks down. The drop is almost 60 feet, jagged coral waiting at the bottom, then deep blue water. Behind him, the crackle of fire still rises from the camp. The sound of shouting drifts over the ridge, sharp and distant. A man beside him whispers, "They'll see us if we stay." His eyes are red from smoke, his voice almost gone. McDole nods. Better the sea than what's behind us. The others hesitate. The wind lifts ash and sparks into the air. Somewhere below, waves strike the rocks like slow, heavy drums. One of the men starts to climb out first, gripping the roots that jut from the dirt wall. He looks back once, his face gray and shining with sweat. "Tell my folks," he begins, but the rest is lost to the wind. He jumps. The splash comes a heartbeat later. Then another man follows, and another. McDole waits until the shouts grow louder behind him. A guard's voice echoes, a single angry command in Japanese. A burst of gunfire rattles through the smoke. Pebbles tumble down beside him. There's no more time. He takes one last breath of hot, smoky air. The horizon blurs, and for a moment he sees the color of the ocean, bright, endless, almost like home. Then he dives. The fall is fast and wild. The air tears past his face, a scream without sound. The world turns white with light and spray as he hits the water. Cold explodes through him. He sinks, then kicks upward, breaking the surface with a gasp. All around, the bay burns. Pieces of wood and bamboo float like wreckage. The camp above is hidden by smoke, but he can still hear the faint pops of gunfire and the hollow roar of fire devouring everything. McDole turns toward open water. The sun blinds him. He swims, slow, steady, every stroke a promise to keep moving. A voice calls out nearby, weak but alive. He sees another head bobbing in the waves. "Mac, over here!" He swims toward it, lungs aching. They cling to a piece of driftwood together, coughing, silent. The sea sways beneath them, wide and heavy, but it carries them away from the shore, away from the sound of death. If you were there, watching from the cliff, you'd see tiny figures disappearing into the ocean, men turned into specks against the blue. From above, it might look hopeless, but down here, in the water, each breath means one thing only: they're still alive. And as the current drifts them toward the jungle coast, the men who chose to jump begin the longest night of their lives. The sea is cold and alive. It lifts them, drops them, spins them like leaves in a storm. McDole holds on to the driftwood with both arms, his chest tight with salt and pain. The smoke from the shore stretches out behind him like a black ribbon. The camp is gone, swallowed by flame. Night comes slowly, one shadow at a time. The water darkens, the wind softens, and the cries fade into distance. McDole cannot tell who is near anymore. Now and then he hears a voice, a call for help, a prayer, a whisper, and then silence again. He turns his face toward the stars. They flicker faintly above the clouds. He whispers to himself, "Stay awake, Mac. Just stay awake." The current pulls him toward the jungle side of the bay. The coastline is a dark wall, lined with mangroves and coral. Hours pass. He drifts until his fingers touch something solid, branches, roots. He drags himself forward, crawling through the shallows. The sand scrapes his knees. He collapses under a tangle of vines, heart hammering, lungs raw. Somewhere behind him, the sky still glows red. The sound of gunfire has stopped, but he can hear boots on gravel and faint shouting in Japanese. Searchlights sweep across the water. He presses his body flat against the earth, hardly breathing. The jungle hums around him, frogs, insects, the quiet rhythm of life that doesn't care about war. When the lights fade, he pulls himself deeper into the trees. The smell of mud and leaves replaces the stench of smoke. For the first time in years, there is no barbed wire between him and the world. He moves carefully, every step slow, feeling his way through the roots. His clothes cling to him, heavy and torn. He finds a hollow between two trees and curls up there. Mosquitoes bite, branches scratch, but he barely notices. Sleep takes him like a sudden fall. Dawn breaks pale and wet. He wakes to the sound of birds and water dripping from the leaves. For a moment, he doesn't know where he is. Then he remembers the tunnel, the jump, the sea. The memory hits like a punch to the chest. He needs food, water, people, anything. He stumbles forward until he reaches a small clearing. A group of Filipinos, men with worn shirts and machetes, stand frozen, staring at him. He raises his hands slowly, his voice cracking. "American, prisoner, please." They don't answer right away. Then one of them steps closer. The man nods, silent, eyes wary but kind. He points toward the trees and whispers, "Come." They move quickly through the jungle, away from the coast. The air smells of earth and smoke. McDole glances back once, just enough to see the thin line of rising haze where the camp once stood. He doesn't know who else made it. He doesn't know what waits ahead. But as he follows the strangers deeper into the green shadows, one thought stays with him. He is free. And freedom, for now, feels like breathing. The jungle hides them for days. McDole follows the Filipino guerrillas along narrow trails, his legs shaking, his mind still halfway in the fire. They feed him rice, coconuts, bits of fish. When they rest, he tries to ask about the others, his friends, the men from the tunnel, but the answer is always the same, a quiet shake of the head. At night, the air is thick and buzzing. The men whisper in Tagalog, passing news between patrols. Japanese soldiers are still on the island, searching the villages. Every gunshot in the distance makes McDole flinch. He doesn't sleep much. After nearly a week, the guerrillas guide him to a small boat hidden under palm leaves. They point north and say, "Allied lines." He nods, his throat tight. The sea at dawn is gray and calm. He rows until his hands bleed. By the time he reaches the next island, he can hardly stand. Filipino scouts meet him there and send a message through the jungle radio network. Word spreads fast. An American prisoner has escaped from Palawan. When McDole finally steps inside an Allied tent weeks later, the air smells of canvas and coffee. He blinks at the light. A young officer looks up from a desk. "Name?" "Private Glenn McDole, U.S. Marine Corps." His voice cracks. The officer stares at him for a long moment, then quietly says, "You're supposed to be dead." They give him water, food, a blanket. When he's strong enough, they ask him to tell everything. He begins slowly. The siren, the gasoline, the tunnel, the jump. His words come out in short bursts. The officers take notes, stop him for details, ask him to repeat names, places. Sometimes he has to stop and breathe before he can go on. Across the table, another survivor sits. A thin man named Eugene Nielsen, his eyes hollow but clear. He nods at McDole's story because he lived it too. When McDole forgets something, Nielsen fills it in. Together, they piece the nightmare back into shape. Outside the tent, a breeze rattles the flagpole. Inside, silence stretches after the last sentence. One officer clears his throat. "You're saying they burned the whole camp?" McDole's hands shake as he answers, "Yes, sir. They locked us in and set it on fire. We dug our way out." The men in uniform exchange looks, shock, disbelief, then grim understanding. Someone leaves to send a message up the chain of command. That night, McDole lies on a cot staring at the canvas roof. The sound of typewriters clatters nearby as his statement is copied and radioed to higher headquarters. He doesn't know it yet, but his words will travel farther than he ever could, across the islands, across oceans, to the desks of generals planning the next campaign. Outside the rain begins to fall, steady and cool. McDole closes his eyes. For the first time since the jump, he feels a little safe, though he knows safety now has a different meaning. It isn't the end of danger, just the beginning of truth being heard. The war ends before McDole truly believes it will. One morning, a sergeant walks into the tent and says, "It's over. Japan surrendered." Just like that. No sound of battle, no final gunfire, just a sentence that feels too heavy to understand. McDole stares at the ground. Around him, men cheer, laugh, cry, but he only nods. "Over," he repeats softly, as if testing the word. Weeks later, he boards a ship bound for home. The ocean stretches wide and quiet. He leans on the railing, watching the wake fade behind the hull. Each wave feels like another piece of the past slipping away. The port in San Francisco smells of salt and oil and life. Crowds wave flags, a brass band plays. When he steps off the gangplank, someone presses a paper cup of coffee into his hands. He drinks it slowly, eyes distant. Reporters swarm the pier, shouting questions about Palawan, about escape, about how it felt to live when others didn't. McDole just shakes his head. "It's not something you talk about," he says. He takes a train back to Iowa. The fields look endless, green and quiet. The wind over the corn sounds almost like the sea. His mother meets him at the station, her hands trembling as she touches his face. "You came back," she whispers. He answers with a tired smile. Years pass. He works in a small shop, then on a farm. Neighbors know him as the quiet man with steady hands. He marries, raises children, fixes engines, plants trees. But sometimes, when thunder rolls across the sky, he goes still. His wife sees it in his eyes, the faraway look that means he's somewhere else again, back in the tunnel, back in the fire. At reunions, he avoids the spotlight. When people call him a hero, he shakes his head. "No," he says softly, "I was just one of the lucky ones." In one rare interview, decades later, a reporter asks him what kept him going in that tunnel. McDole looks down at his hands, scarred and strong, then answers, "I wasn't brave. I just kept digging." The room goes quiet. The reporter doesn't ask anything else. At night, McDole sometimes dreams of the sea, the cool weight of the water, the long swim toward the dark line of the shore. But in the dream, the sky is always clear, and the air smells of rain, not smoke. If you stood near his house on a summer evening, you might hear him outside, sitting on the porch, listening to the wind move through the fields. It sounds a little like waves. He doesn't talk much about the past anymore. He doesn't have to. Silence for him is not forgetting. It's remembering quietly, in a language only the survivors understand. The island of Palawan looks different now. The airfield is gone, the wire fences rusted away. Where the camp once stood, there is a park, Plaza Cuartel, green, peaceful, open to the sea. Children play near the old stone walls. Tourists take pictures under the shade of the acacia trees. Most don't know what lies beneath their feet. Beneath the grass, the ground still holds the shape of the trenches, the same trenches that once held the men of Palawan. In the corner of the park stands a small arch of coral stone, blackened by time. Behind it, a tunnel opening remains, sealed now by iron bars. The plaque beside it is simple. "In memory of the American prisoners of war who perished here, December 14, 1944. Locals sometimes point toward the spot and tell visitors, "That's where they escaped, down there, through the tunnel." The words drift through the air like an echo, soft but proud. If you walk closer, you can still smell the salt from the bay. The sea glitters the same way it did that morning long ago. Waves rise and fall against the rocks where McDougal and the others jumped. Each one feels like a heartbeat from the past, steady and endless. An old man, sitting on a bench nearby, tells his grandson, "This place, this is where courage lived." The boy listens, not quite understanding, eyes wide as he looks at the tunnel bars. In another part of the world, far away from Palawan, a veteran gathers with his family. It's McDougal, older now, hair silver, hands steady as ever. His grandchildren ask him what war was like. He smiles, quiet for a moment, then answers, "It was dark, but we found a way out." He doesn't speak of fire or fear. He speaks of light, of the thin blue glow that appeared at the end of the tunnel when all hope was gone. He says that sometimes, in life, you have to keep digging, even when you can't see the end. His family listens closely. The room feels still, as if even the walls are listening. Outside, wind moves through the trees, and he hears something faint in it. Maybe the echo of waves, maybe the voices of the men he left behind. Back in Palawan, as the sun sets, the park glows gold. Birds sweep low over the bay. The last light touches the old coral stones and the sea beyond. If you stand there at dusk, you might feel it, the quiet weight of history, the courage buried in the earth, the peace that grew from pain. And somewhere in that fading light, between the sea and the soil, the story of the tunnel still breathes, soft, steady, eternal. The screen fades from the golden sky of Palawan to black and white film. You see ships docking, flags waving, men in worn uniforms stepping onto American soil. Their faces are thin but alive. Some smile, some can't. The camera flickers, old and soft, but the feeling behind it is clear: relief, sorrow, and something deeper: the quiet cost of survival. A voice from the past plays faintly over the images. McDole's, older now, recorded years later. He says, "People always ask how it felt. The truth is, it felt like breathing again." The film shows the coastline of Palawan today: clear water, coral shining under the sun. Boats drift gently across the same bay that once burned red with fire. Fishermen pull in their nets. Children laugh nearby. The island breathes in peace now. If you stand there, you might not see any sign of what happened. Only the wind remembers. It moves through the palms, across the water, whispering stories in a language older than grief. The narrator's voice lowers, calm and sure. In war, survival isn't about victory. It begins with a choice, a single step toward life when everything around you says there's none left to take. The camera moves slowly over the memorial plaque at Plaza Cuartel, the names carved into metal. Rain dots the surface, then slides down like tears. Somewhere beyond that, on a quiet farm in Iowa, McDole's grave stands small and plain. A flag rests beside it, fluttering in the wind. His name, his rank, the same dates carved in stone as hundreds of others. But if you listen closely, his story still speaks. Not through battles or medals, but through that one moment when he chose to move toward the light. You can almost hear it now: the scrape of hands on dirt, the rush of air, the crash of waves, and the sound of a heart that refused to stop beating. The sea fades into silence. The last image lingers: sunlight spilling over the cliffs of Palawan, the same cliffs that once gave men a path from darkness to freedom. And then, in white letters against the blue horizon: dedicated to the 11 who found the light at Palawan, and to all who kept digging when the world turned dark.